Prime Minister's Questions, Kamal. It's back. We're excited. A whole new look PMQs because Rishi Sunak is now leader of the opposition. Keir Starmer is now Prime Minister. How are they going to handle it? Is it going to be barbed and aggressive? Or is it going to be friendly and accommodating in its first week?
And we're going to be talking about the most important horse race in town, and that's the race to be the next Conservative leader after Rishi Sunak.
Indeed. Who's taken the blinkers off? Who's going to fall at the first hurdle? We'll bring you all the latest gossip on that. Welcome to the Daily Tea with me, Camilla Tominey.
And me, Kamal Ahmed. So, Camilla, get us up to date. Where are we on the Conservative leadership battle?
Declaration alert. James Cleverly, to continue your brilliant horse racing analogy, is the first out of the traps.
I wouldn't say it was brilliant, Camilla, but yes.
It was all right. Look,
mediocre, I'd put a maximum.
Give it, it's not the first time. Tories have been described as horse-faced, by the way. But James Cleverly is the first out of the traps. He has decided to declare in the Telegraph, where else, Kamal, at the end of the day, he's going to be running, quite like how punchy he was with saying, I don't mind about all of this talk about we need to have a conversation about the future of conservatism in this country. I'm just going to put my name out there. And he did release quite a touching video about where he's come from, where he's going, and why he thinks he'll be a good leader of the opposition and, in time, he hopes, Prime Minister.
This idea that he's come from relatively straightforward, humble background is part of his offer. And in the piece he wrote for The Telegraph, really important, of course, speaking to Conservative Party members, because although MPs will make the decisions on winnowing down the candidates to 4 and then 2, those 2 candidates, if we get to that stage, will go to a vote of Conservative Party members. So they know they need to be speaking in The Telegraph if they're going to get heard by people who support or are members of the Conservative Party. And then just a point from the piece he wrote in The Telegraph, which is just framing where Cleverly is coming from. And I would suggest he is one of those people at the centre of the Conservative offer, centre to the left of the Conservatives, not to suggest he's obviously left-wing. And he said, we need to be a government in waiting. We are not a pressure group or a think tank. Sacrificing pragmatic government in the national interest on the altar of ideological purity is not Conservative. We must ditch the self-indulgent infighting and be ready to deliver when the next chance comes. He's very much going for that centre ground. I know, Camilla, you and I have argued about this. So common ground.
Common ground.
What
we
you
love
said
common
yesterday.
ground. Yeah.
The common ground, not flirting with the Farageist edges of the Conservative Party where possibly some other of the contenders will be playing.
Again, to continue your horse racing analogy.
We're going to whip it to death.
Why not? I think if you're a bookmaker, you'd be saying he's got an outside chance, but that competition on the common ground comes from Tom Tugendhat.
Tugendhat.
No, hang on.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
You.
I happened to message Tom of Earl Grey tea fame this morning to get some confirmation of how we do pronounce his name after the Kamala Harris debate of yesterday. I say Tugendhat. He's spelling that Toogen-Hart, but my brothers say it differently. We should go with him, so it's Tugendhat. Is that okay?
Very well done. Of course, Earl Grey, of course, we found out this
Prime
morning,
Minister.
literally a Prime Minister.
I said, could someone who served Earl Grey as a default be Prime Minister?
I would say that was a signal of where he wants to get to.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. He was actually, I said that Kemi Badenoch was the talk of the Spectator Party. I was at the Speaker's house, a reception for the press that was put on by Sir Lindsay Hoyle last night. Lots of Lancashire-themed canapes, like a hot pot, like in a canapé, like just literally you could just stick it straight in your mouth. And then there was like a chili con carne and a potato. These were good canapes. I'm just saying. And Tom Tugendhat was the talk of that party. So there you have it. And I've got the impression that he's close to declaring himself.
Outside bet for James Cleverly. What I would say, don't forget what happened in 1994 after the terrible death of John Smith, leader of the Labour Party. After that, and then the Labour leadership election, who was first out became a very important part of who won. And of course, that was Tony Blair, even though at that moment, Gordon Brown was the favourite. So I think James Cleverly, because he's not the favourite, has decided he has to go early. He has to try and get out as far as he can before the firmer favourites get into the race. Because it's often, Camilla, we've followed these things regularly, whether that's Michael Heseltine, Michael Portillo, the person that people think is going to win is rarely the winner.
The Daily Tea is going to be speaking to these candidates over the course of the next few weeks and months. It's going to be a long race. We're not going to get the contenders whittled down to 4 till at least the autumn. They're going to be coming on the Daily Tea. We're going to be speaking to them, drilling into what they believe and stand for, offering them a cuppa, finding out if it's Earl Grey or English breakfast, which is clearly very important when it comes to decision making. So watch this space.
So let's go to that first PMQs between the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and the old Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, in different jobs now. Exciting moment. PMQs always an important signal about the political mood music, who's up and who's down, and you and me, Camilla, decided such was its import, we were going to watch it live. Let's see how it went.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
And I know the whole House will be shocked by the news that a soldier has been attacked in Kent. Our thoughts are with him, his family, and our armed forces, who serve to keep us safe. We wish him a swift recovery. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the whole House will also want to join me in wishing Team GB good luck as they travel to Paris for the Olympic Games. And Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others discussing how this government will bring about the change the country has decisively voted for. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings.
Wry smile as he does the usual wording of the Prime Minister,
Also
so a wry smile there.
Decisively.
As Prime Minister, I also associate myself with his remarks about the soldier in Kent and, of course, my wishes to the British Olympians. At Coombe, in my constituency, Thames Water has pumped sewage into the river.
This is a Liberal Democrat, I'm sure, because he's talking about sewage and he's in Coombe.
He said Coombe. Yeah.
Thames Water was allowed by Ofwat to withdraw £7 billion in dividends, yet now wants to jack up my constituents' bills. I welcome the water bill in the King's speech, but would the Prime Minister agree with my constituents and me that the system is broken? And will he now commit to scrapping Ofwat and replacing it with a tougher regulator that will finally put people and planet ahead of water company profits?
Yeah. Can I welcome the honourable member to his place and thank him for raising this important issue in relation to water. And customers should not pay the price for the mismanagement by water companies, and we've already announced immediate steps to put water companies under tougher regime, and the Minister for Water will meet the bosses of failing companies to hold them to account for their performance. After 14 years of failure with our rivers and beaches, it falls to this government of service to fix the mess of the failure of the last 14 years.
Says thank you, opening up. That's quite interesting.
I know, but the legacy argument. We've inherited this mess.
Mr. Speaker, many young trans people and their families.
That's Nadia Whitcomb, who's been a Labour MP for quite some time.
Nottingham East, she's one of the youngest Labour MPs. I think she's still in her 20s.
Quite left-wing.
A parent of a trans child told me, "I'm so worried about my child. I'm terrified for what this means for them and where Britain is going on these issues." Will the Prime Minister meet with young trans people, their families and organisations supporting them, so that he can hear why they feel so strongly that these restrictions must be reversed?
Can I welcome the honourable friend back to her place? Our guiding principles must be the well-being of children. And this is a serious government, and we will approach that question with care, not inflammatory dividing lines. The CAS review was clear that there's not enough evidence on the long-term impact of puberty blockers to know if they're safe. And the Health Secretary will consult with organisations supporting young people and families, and I will ensure that there is a meeting with her and the relevant minister as soon as that can be arranged.
She is not happy with that response because she's been shaking her head while Wes Streeting has been nodding his.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister in expressing my shock at the attack on a British soldier? Our thoughts are with him and his family as we wish him a speedy recovery. And I also join with the Prime Minister in his warm words about our Olympic athletes. I've no doubt that after years of training, focus and dedication, they'll bring back many gold medals. Although, to be honest, I'm probably not the first person they want to hear advice from on how to win. But I'm glad I'm glad in our
the new witty
exchanges...
Sunak.
I know, we're
Camilla.
loving this.
I'm glad, Mr. Speaker. And in that vein, when he saw Chancellor Scholz recently, I'm sure he thanked him for the considerable air defence that the Germans are providing the Ukrainians. But did he also raise with him the issue of the Germans perhaps providing long-range missiles, just as the UK, America and France have now done?
It's quite conciliatory, this, isn't it?
Yeah, the tone is very different. I think it's deliberate for both of them, probably.
Can't really go for the jugular on week 2. It probably doesn't seem quite right.
Discussed with all of our allies, and part of my message was to urge all of our allies to provide further support where they can to the Ukrainian people, and that was well received, and there was unity coming out of the NATO Council. That's what we must all do.
Somebody there with a folder of photographs of MPs behind the Prime Minister. That would be his parliamentary private secretary, making sure that he knows who he's speaking to in the House, because obviously there's hundreds of new faces.
We could do with that, Camilla, couldn't we?
We could do with that.
And President Zelensky was very pleased that we've been able to make that successful transition.
Kamal, are we observing the blossoming of some new political bromance?
Legal and diplomatic work
very
that the
friendly.
UK has led over the past several months, together with our allies Canada and America. Can I just say that in the dangerous and uncertain world that we now sadly live in, I know firsthand how important it is that our Prime Minister can use his prerogative power to quickly respond militarily to protect British national security, sometimes without giving this House prior notice. Now, these are perhaps the most difficult decisions that a Prime Minister can take, and I welcomed his support when I made them. And I want to take this opportunity to assure him of the opposition's support if he deems it necessary to take similar action in the future. So does he agree with me that whilst the use of the prerogative power is sometimes politically controversial, it is essential to ensure the safety and security of the British people?
I agree it's essential, and our security is the first duty of government.
Rishi Sunak was taking the opportunity there, wasn't he, to also remind people that he used to be the Prime Minister?
Yes.
So this new, very sober tone. And
Yes.
secondly, as you'll remember when I reached out to you when I
Yes.
was really powerful,
Yeah.
as you'll remember.
Also, it serves two purposes, doesn't it? It reminds people that he was a statesman once and acted responsibly and collaboratively with the opposition, which then basically says to Starmer, please do the same, otherwise you're going to be exposed. But second of all, that's quite important for him to focus on foreign affairs. There have been some concerns, haven't there, with some people on the front bench having expressed past concerns about renewing Trident and that kind of thing. I think it was also quite politically tactical to sort of say to him in a very friendly and collaborative way, you are going to be tough on foreign affairs, aren't you? You are going to be tough on defence. And if decisions need to be made before you address the House under an emergency situation, you must do it. To which he seemed to be saying yes.
I think it's quite useful for Keir Starmer as well to be able to play in that territory, to tell his own backbenchers, I'm not going to change from the previous government.
We have a more severe crisis than we thought as we go through the books of the last 14 years.
Reminder of legacy. We knew we'd get it in. We should
Should
start
we
a
play
bingo.
Legacy Bingo?
Let's do
Yeah,
PMQs
Legacy Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Legacy mentioned now 3 times.
That's been replaced.
I'm
the
going to do a little
toolmaker.
tally.
The
I'm doing it on
toolmaker
legacy.
has been replaced
Legacy
by...
we've inherited. We're up to 3.
We do want to work with the sector and where we can across the House to create a national care service.
Thank you and grateful to everybody.
What, that should be on the bingo card?
Yeah, because he's doing this whole thing. I'm a new type of leader.
Yes.
No more divisiveness.
Right, we'll
thank
draw
you.
one up.
I'm grateful.
At the moment, I can only cope with the legacy tally right now.
Okay, I'll do the thank you tally.
Thank you so much. Stephen Flynn, Westminster
Mr. Speaker,
leader
may
of the
I
SNP.
again warmly congratulate the Prime Minister on ending Tory rule. In his campaign to do so, he was, of course...
And yours, people are saying, reduced to 8 MP. Oh, he's taking it as a joke. Good for him. The poor old SNP absolutely reduced on the
They're too close
benches.
for comfort now. They're too close for comfort.
Edinburgh City Council, led by the Labour Party, have
Just
produced
noting, this is
5-year
another Lib Dem
projections which show
question.
we do not have capacity
Tory
in the city
opposition
to accommodate
haven't really
pupils
been
who may
given
leave
any
the
extra
independent
questions
sector.
yet.
Poverty. This from a Labour government. The headlines are awful for the Prime Minister this morning. Poverty campaigners are furious with the Prime Minister. Is his honeymoon over before it's even begun?
Ooh, SNP siding with Corbynista shock.
Having left for the election campaign with quite a significant number of SNP members and come back with a small handful, I really don't think lectures on what the electorate in Scotland are thinking. If you look at I'm very proud of our Scottish Labour MPs on this side of the House. And I simply repeat the point I made to his leader. Perhaps the SNP needs to account for the 30,000 extra children in poverty.
The SNP is still playing the old game of PMQs. I think Sunak has done better playing into Ukraine, reminding people about continuity, quieter, calmer. The SNP haven't got the memo.
Taking £1 billion out of the budgets for London's policing and forcing the closure of both of the police stations in the Chipping Barnet constituency. Does the Prime Minister agree with me on the importance of our police stations and in the need to rebuild local policing?
Can I welcome my honourable friend to his place, the first ever Labour MP for Chipping Barnet, and I know he will serve his constituency with pride. And our guarantee will put 13,000 extra neighbourhood officers and PCSOs back on Britain's streets. And that's a fully funded plan. He's right to say that the last government absolutely hammered police numbers, and he will have seen the impact of that in his constituency. And it is telling that the
it's a broad umbrella, I think.
I'm taking it up
legacy issue.
5 legacy references.
Been done.
Uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration since 1990.
Hang on. Reform alert, reform question alert.
First one.
It's about immigration, Kamal. Who'd thunk it? So this is the Reform MP for Great Yarmouth.
Has failed our country.
Rupert Lowe.
Good people of Great Yarmouth would much appreciate a yes or no answer to this straightforward question.
Sitting there with Lee Anderson and Nigel Farage and Richard Tice and others.
But look, I do think that it's serious that the previous government lost control of our borders.
Previous government legacy.
Yes, sorry, 6. Beg your pardon. Sorry, I was just
the leader of the opposition when he
trying to
was
remember
Prime
Reform
Minister,
MPs' names.
50,000 people crossed the channel to make sure we can deal with the mess that we have inherited. I'm pleased
7.
to hear
There we are.
Can the Prime Minister set out to this House the steps he will take to revive town centres like Ipswich?
Can I again welcome my honourable friend to his place? Congratulate Ipswich on their promotion, though not on, I think it's Boxing Day when they visit Arsenal. I'm going to resist the temptation that he...
Good data there.
Does he yet?
Well prepped.
Have you been helping him prep? Be honest, eh? Just to say, we are playing Ipswich on Boxing Day. My God, that's good knowledge.
About, and that's why we will replace the business rate system to level the playing field, and we will absolutely address regional inequality
Just
for our
to
local
explain, by the way, that some questions he knows he's getting and can prep for, they're on the order paper, but other people stand up and down, and he doesn't know, the Prime Minister, who might be selected and who might be asked in the bobbing process.
Secretary of State for Agriculture's desire to achieve sustainability.
Yeah, so rural communities worried about the countryside being concreted
for that
over.
Question. We have to get economic growth in this country. We've had failure over the last 14 years, and the failure on economic growth has been central to it.
14-year legacy.
Failure to build, change your approach, and change your party.
Ooh, he's taking the gloves off right at the end, Kamal.
Questions, we'll let the front benches change over.
And off they go. Just to confirm, that's 8 references to 14 years of Tory hell.
And we weren't counting the number of times at the beginning. I think it was certainly Prime Minister's questions of a few chapters, wasn't it? There was the first chapter was about the fact that he is the new Prime Minister. Roars of approval as he walked in from the huge number of MPs he has. Clearly somebody who is much more confident in that arena than he was on the campaign trail, where we watched him in the heads-to-heads, stumbling, struggling, Rishi Sunak butting in. So the first thing is that he will go back to number 10 now and say, that was a good first performance for me. I'm sure the team around him will say the same. Then the second chapter was sort of, what's Rishi Sunak going to do? Mm-hmm. Rishi Sunak reminding the House that he was once Prime Minister. It was all very polite. We weren't quite counting the thank yous.
Oh.
I prefer that type of government. I think the public
you spoiled
have
the sport.
said
I
no.
like a punch up.
Yes, the public. If I could just finish my point, please.
Sorry,
Camilla.
no.
Please.
No, because I like to butt in.
I think this idea, he mentioned service a lot. He said thank you for some of the questions. He then, they spoke about sort of working across the two parties. So that was the second kind of challenge. Then I think the third was the SNP and the Greens, who were much more like traditional PMQs, and maybe, Camilla, the types of much more of the PMQs noise, which has become part of the famous theatre of this event.
2 further observations. Starmer and Sunak, get a room already. I mean, maybe he's just thinking Kemi Badenoch absolutely tore Angela Rayner to shreds last week, therefore I'm just going to do the good statesman thing today, and that could be politically wise. Second of all, yes, he is trying to hold the government's feet to the flames on care and social care, but Sir Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, was giving me massively ganging up on the Tory vibes. So we're going to have to ask ourselves, are those 71 MPs for the Lib Dems really going to be holding the government to account? And the Tories are going to have to ask themselves, how do we make more of a mark on PMQs if the tendency is going to be for Lindsay Hoyle, rightly or wrongly, to sort of do a good plethora of selections from some of the new caucuses represented, Greens, some of the independents, obviously Reform got a question, Lib Dems got some questions, SNP made their mark.
It's a multi-party house, isn't it?
The Tories were a bit invisible today, and they're going to have to try and work on their bobbing, I would suggest, Kamal.
Carefully. And then I think finally worth seeing some of the themes. That obviously is the first Prime Minister's questions of the new government, and actually the last one before the summer recess, so we won't see them again until the autumn. But 4 issues, I think, there will become running themes for this government. Planning, battles over planning, Gaza, irritation with many people on the Labour benches in particular, but Greens as well, and possibly the Liberal Democrats, that Keir Starmer has not been aggressive enough on that issue. Child benefit, the first rebellion against the government yesterday. And the poverty equality. And then, as you say, with Sir Ed Davey, care. And how are they going to sort that out without, at this stage, any commitment to more money? So even though that was half an hour, it was important Keir Starmer got through it without, messing it up. There are some themes there I'm sure, Camilla, you and I will be returning to really regularly.